Randy Savage wasn't just a wrestler, he was a goddamn cartoon character come to life, dipped in cocaine, paranoia, and seething charisma. If pro wrestling were the mafia, Savage would have been that one capo who never left his house without a wiretap detector and a revolver duct-taped under his tassels. He didn't trust anybody, didn't forgive anything, and had the memory of an elephant that was personally wronged by every animal in the zoo. When Savage hated you, it wasn't casual. It wasn't, "I'll block you on Twitter." It was, "I'll make sure you never work in this town again, and also I might threaten to physically dismantle you live on a pay-per-view." From locker room, disrespect to broken friendships, and alleged threats involving loaded firearms, Randy's beefs were legendary and terrifyingly real. Some wrestlers hated in silence. Savage hated with a promo voice and a suspiciously large duffel bag. And unlike Hogan, who couldn't hold a grudge because he was too busy holding a mirror, Randy kept receipts, records, and grudges like they were family heirlooms. So let's snap into a Slim Jim of spite and count down the 5 poor bastards who got the wrong end of the madness. Savage's disdain for Lex Luger wasn't just about Elizabeth, but that definitely played a role. Although Elizabeth and Savage were divorced by the time Luger came into the picture, the emotional residue still hung heavy for the Macho Man. Their divorce didn't magically erase the years of a rocky, intense relationship. So, when Luger started getting cozy with Elizabeth in WCW, it wasn't just a minor personal issue for Savage. It felt like a jab, even if they weren't together anymore. For Savage, it wasn't just about his ex-wife. It was about respect, loyalty, and the notion that Luger was trying to take something from him that he felt still belonged to him in some way. But it wasn't just the relationship with Elizabeth that pissed Savage off. Luger's political maneuvering in WCW was also a point of contention. Savage, a man who had earned his stripes through relentless work, didn't have much patience for someone he saw as using backstage politics to climb the ranks. Luger was often accused of relying on his connections with Eric Bischoff and other WCW higher-ups, a move that Savage felt was a shortcut to success rather than earning his position. This kind of backdoor politicking wasn't something Savage respected. After all, Savage had climbed the wrestling ladder through sheer grit, not by cozying up to the right people. While the two never had a major blowout in front of the cameras, backstage animosity was thick. Luger may have been a staple of WCW, but in Savage's eyes, he was nothing more than a manufactured star, one who had little to show for himself other than what he was able to convince others he was capable of, and for Savage, that wasn't enough. If you asked Randy Savage what go-away heat felt like in real life, he'd probably point at the Honky Tonk Man and say, "That guy, brother." Honky Tonk wasn't just a goofball with an Elvis gimmick. He was a walking middle finger to everything Savage stood for in the business. Savage was meticulous, professional, and intense. Honky was loud, obnoxious, and always one bad punchline away from getting his teeth knocked down his throat. And he loved it that way. Their heat dates back to the late 80s, during their time in the WWF. Honky was the Intercontinental Champion, and while Savage was ready to carry the belt into the stratosphere, Honky clung to it like a karaoke mic at a dive bar. According to Honky himself, he refused to drop the title to Savage, claiming he had the crowd and the pull to keep it. And that decision derailed what could have been a rocket push for Macho. Savage never forgave him. You don't mess with a man's momentum, especially not someone who's watching every step like a hawk on meth. But it wasn't just business. Honky ran his mouth in every interview, calling Savage paranoid and mocking his protective nature toward Miss Elizabeth. That was red button stuff. Savage didn't just protect Elizabeth in real life, he treated her like sacred territory, and Honky poked at it with a stick like a raccoon with a grudge. Even decades later, Honky kept talking. Savage, meanwhile, held his tongue, but never forgot. He may not have publicly buried Honky, but privately, the contempt was thick enough to cut with a guitar string. Honky Tonk was a clown in Savage's eyes, a heat-seeking, cowardly clown who didn't know when to shut up. And that, more than anything, was unforgivable. There was no kayfabe in Randy Savage's loathing of Hulk Hogan. It started as a handshake alliance in the ring and ended like most bad divorces. Public, painful, and with each man thinking the other was a manipulative bastard. While Hogan was all about brotherhood in front of the cameras, Savage slowly came to see the red and yellow messiah as a backstabbing egomaniac with a tan that could blind a welder. Savage's issues with Hogan weren't just professional, they were deeply personal. Let's start with the elephant in the room, Miss Elizabeth. Savage always suspected that Hogan wasn't being entirely respectful about her behind closed doors, and the whole Mega Powers angle played into real-life paranoia. Hulk was known for being all smiles on screen, but steering the ship backstage. When he put his arm around Elizabeth or cut one of his babyface promos about protecting her, Savage wasn't thinking great storytelling. He was thinking, I'm going to knock your mustache into your lungs. But business was just as ugly. Hogan had a reputation for politics that would make the U.S. Senate blush, and Savage knew he was being pushed down the card anytime it suited Hogan's needs. In WCW, things got worse. Hogan had creative control baked into his contract, the kind of clause Savage would have ripped out of someone else's hands and set on fire. Macho saw Hogan for what he was, a man who pretended to share the spotlight while making damn sure it stayed bolted to his own face. When Savage dropped his infamous Be a Man Hogan diss track in 2003, it wasn't a gimmick. It was a shoot set to a beat. Lyrics like, I'm going to kick your butt and wash your mouth out with soap sound goofy. Until you realize Savage meant every syllable. That was real fire. Randy Savage never forgot, and in Jake Roberts' case, Savage never forgave either. Their beef went way beyond the ring, into venomous territory, both literally and metaphorically. You know it's real when a man lets a live king cobra bite him on live TV and still thinks the other guy went too far. Here's the shoot. During that infamous 1991 angle on Superstars of Wrestling, Jake brought a cobra to the ring, had it bite Savage's arm while he was tied in the ropes, and laughed like a man who wasn't getting invited to Thanksgiving. It wasn't fake. Savage forced Jake backstage to let the snake bite him first, to prove it wasn't poisonous, because even Macho's paranoia had paranoia. But after the bite, something shifted. Savage hated Roberts before, but now he had the kind of hatred you keep in a locked box marked Do Not Touch without gloves. Roberts later admitted that Savage barely spoke to him again, and when he did, it was ice cold. He didn't trust me, ever, even after it was all said and done, Jake confessed in interviews. Savage thought Jake crossed a line. That wasn't just a wrestling angle. It was trauma disguised as television. Add to that Roberts' struggles with drugs and his abrasive attitude backstage, and you've got a combo that Savage, a control freak's control freak, couldn't tolerate. Years later, when Jake was trying to get clean and make amends, Savage wasn't buying it. He didn't publicly bash Roberts, but he didn't offer a handshake either. That silence was deafening. Randy could forgive a lot, but not betrayal, and definitely not endangering his life for the sake of heat. You cross the line with Randy Savage? That's it. You're done, brother. Forever. If you're looking for the crown jewel of Randy Savage's grudges, the Everest of animosity, look no further than Vincent Kennedy McMahon. This wasn't a feud. This was a Cold War fought in public silence, backstage whispers, and decades of unspoken fury. While other wrestlers eventually made up with Vince, Savage was the holdout. He never returned, never shook hands, never buried the hatchet, and you better believe that was by choice. So what the hell happened? Theories swirl like a toilet after Taco Bell. One version says Savage was furious at how Vince shifted WWF toward the new generation, pushing out older stars like himself in favor of guys like Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart. Savage wanted to keep wrestling. Vince wanted him on commentary. And that suggestion landed with all the grace of a fart at a funeral. Savage saw it as a demotion, an insult. I'm still the man, brother, was the vibe. And Vince was like, nah, you're the mic guy now. Another layer? The persistent rumors. Savage's departure in 1994 was so abrupt, so total, it kicked up wild stories, some so insane even Jake Roberts wouldn't snort them. The most infamous one, no, we won't reprint it, has no credible proof, but its endurance speaks volumes. What's certain is this. Vince never publicly explained Savage's exit. Savage never spoke kindly of Vince again, and WWE didn't induct him into the Hall of Fame until after his death. That tells you everything. In Savage's eyes, Vince was a manipulative empire builder who used people, bled them dry, and tossed them aside. And Randy wasn't about to play that role. He left, slammed the door so hard the hinges flew off, and never looked back. You only get ghosted by Randy Savage once. Randy Savage didn't do things halfway. Not love, not promos, not wardrobe choices, and definitely not grudges. The man treated beef like it was an Olympic event, and he trained for it daily with Slim Jims and distrust. But unlike some bitter old-timers who stew in resentment like human crockpots, Savage's hate was almost poetic, purposeful. It had weight. It had tassels. The thing is, he wasn't a spiteful man by default. He was a loyal one. But loyalty, when betrayed, turns into something far more lethal than just bitterness. With Savage, if you crossed the line, you didn't get a second chance. You got silence. Ice cold, sunglasses on inside, don't speak my name. Silence. And for some of the men on this list, that was a fate worse than a promo burial. Whether it was Vince McMahon playing Puppet Master, Hulk Hogan playing Two-Faced Best Friend, or Honky Tonk Man playing, well, anything, Savage had no time for it. He was the real deal in a world of phonies, a man who brought intensity to breakfast and paranoia to lunch. And if you ever wronged him, you'd be dealing with that grudge until your final breath, and probably his afterlife elbow drop too. In the end, Macho didn't burn bridges. He body-slammed them. And for all his fury, he left behind a legacy no hater, backstabber, or guitar-strumming clown could ever take away. If you made it this far, you've survived the madness. Now do the honorable thing. Drop an elbow on that like button, hit subscribe, and ring that bell like Savage just threw you into the damn ropes. Don't be like Hogan, sneaky and full of crap. Be like Randy, intense, loyal, and always ready to throw hands when the beef is real. More backstage venom, more broken friendships, and more wrestlers who really couldn't stand each other coming up next. Thanks for watching.